As a mangaka at Type Moon. By X Emiya chapter 91 to 100. Through Merlin's words, he also roughly understood. Originally, the counter-forces method was to influence him, making him unconsciously ignore his own sister, step by step forcing himself into a desperate situation. And then, as a last resort, seeking Shiki help. No. Void Shiki. At that time, he estimated that he would obtain the red stone of Asia in her hands. And then, his sister would be saved by her in some way, while he joined the Mages Association by force. The result was unknown. However, it probably wouldn't be a favorable outcome. But now it's much better. He suddenly understood. The magician of the second magic, also known as Zelrach, the one who possesses the second magic, operation of parallel worlds, has resolved everything with just one sentence. Perhaps in the eyes of the Mages Association, he was just an experiment, because the second magician instilled something in him, causing his mind to seize up and reveal the mystery. At that time, even if the magus were resentful, it wouldn't matter. After all, the big shot above, the second magician, had already spoken. And it seemed that such things were not the first time, judging by Merlin's tone. Being able to move between parallel worlds. The concept of the world was already quite thin for him. Whether it was the complete disappearance of mysteries, the depletion of the ley lines, or the mysteries covering the earth again, he probably wouldn't care. He didn't know what had happened in the future to make that person take action. It's quite an honor, though. Even so, many magus maybe bear a grudge against him. However, there shouldn't be many magus of this kind. After all, magus had their own things to do, so it was unlikely that there were many who acted on impulse. Probably not many. Even if there were, they would be sent away, well, in a physical sense. Even if one or two were overlooked because there were too many people coming, they should still be weak enough for him to handle on his own. After all, there were many matters concerning the counter-force, so at most, one or two counter-guardians would be sent to watch over his side, and maybe not even that. But after all, Type Moon was a dangerous place. If a traveler came to this world, they would naturally become a part of counter-force, Alaya. And then Alaya could just lead them astray in their subconscious, and that person would die unknowingly. Unless it was the kind of power that could single-handedly oppose the entire world, that degree of strength could be considered safe. So, that's all there is to it. Is there anything else you don't understand? Merlin looked at Kazuya and asked. In that case, what about the magic circuits? Does she have the qualifications? Kazuya asked Merlin, not for himself, but for his sister. The second magician would be responsible for sending his sister, Kazumi, to the Mages Association in the parallel world as El Meloi's disciple. Although this matter could already be preliminarily judged, Kazumi's future achievements would not be lower than other magus. However, that was under the condition of having magic circuits and magical aptitude. Since Kazumi was a native of this world, she definitely had magic circuits, but what about the quantity? What about the quality? Indeed, Kurikawa Kazumi's magic circuits are average, even mediocre, with only 9 circuits. Increasing the quantity is not something that can be achieved by ordinary means, but you can rest assured. Increasing the quality of each circuit is still possible with some effort. So, what do you think? Although Merlin was asking for an opinion, he didn't stop speaking. This time we can block it, but this world is not peaceful either. Mysteries will always attract mysteries, and she has always been around mysteries. Sooner or later, she will be involved, and if there is no corresponding power, she is not a protected target of the counter-force. And you are her brother, so this matter still requires your decision, Merlin said, placing the decision-making power in Kazuya's hands. No, the decision is not in my hands, it's in hers. Wake her up. Kazuya looked at his sister, who was beside him, and said, let her make her own decision. She has the right to know her own fate. Is that so? Then it's up to you. The only thing I want to say is that even if it's Jewel Magician, traveling in parallel worlds himself is one thing, but taking people with him is not that simple. As Merlin spoke, he stood up and walked towards Kazumi, who was on the side. Of course, these things may also be lies, he told me. After all, it's normal to hide clumsiness and the like. But even if it's clumsiness, He doesn't plan to take people with him often, which means it may become quite difficult for you to see her in the future. I understand, I'll figure it out on my own. Kazuya nodded. He felt that he could trust the person named Merlin in front of him, not because he was named Merlin, not for any other reason, but he told himself that he could trust him. It was like his future self was speaking directly to his present self. It was such a strange feeling. As for parallel worlds, well, he had mysterious self-confidence in this matter. Sooner or later he would be able to do it himself, even if it wasn't with the second magic, he would find other ways to travel in parallel worlds. So even if that was the case, it wasn't a big deal. Even if Kazumi wasn't here, he could still go there on his own, but it all depended on her judgment. Well then, Merlin said as he walked up to Kazumi in front of him. Good morning, the sun has already risen, it's time to wake up. Kazumi, who had not woken up all along, slowly opened her eyes. Where is this? This is the world of dreams, Merlin said with a smile. Welcome to your own dream, Miss Kurakawa Kazumi. Huh? My own dream? Then why are you welcoming me? Huh? Oni-chan? Kazuya woke up. Elmeloi. Too, huh? That way, I can rest easy for now. He looked at the bed next to him, and indeed, just in case, he had booked a room, but Kazumi, who had been lying in the bed next to him, had disappeared. Fortunately, when he was in the dream, he had already taught her the ripple breathing technique. It was really impressive that it could even be taught in such a way in a dream. Probably because the dream was created by Merlin. Now, on the floor of this hotel, there was something very incongruous. Flowers were blooming everywhere. Who knows, there was no soil here, how could there be flowers? It was as if it was deliberately telling him that everything before this was not a dream. Really, it was too deliberately done. Kazuya got out of bed and stepped into the sea of flowers in the room. He examined them carefully. They were indeed growing on the floor. When pulled out, they even had stems. But there were no voids in the floor, it was truly a mysterious witchcraft. He took out a pen and paper and sketched everything from various angles, and even took a couple of photos. Didn't Merlin think about how to deal with these flowers? I'm not a magus, and I'm not a vampire. I can't use suggestion or hypnosis or anything like that. Did he just leave it to me to clean up? After packing everything up, Kazuya placed his hand on the ground. Golden ripples flowed into the sea of flowers from his arm. Ripple dash. Sizzle sizzle sizzle. All the flowers were shattered, and he felt a bit sorry for them. Well, in that case, I can leave it to the hotel to clean up. Kazuya sighed and smiled slightly. With that, it was over. The next thing to do was to go to the Ryugi residence. He's been waiting for this day for so long. On the other hand, at the moment Kurakawa Kazuya woke up, the only thing that felt the chaos was the counterforce, which existed only on instinct. Originally, it had returned to normal when it stopped influencing Kurakawa Kazuya, but not only that, why was there a trace of its own power on Kurakawa Kazuya? The counterforce was in chaos, in the inner sea of the planet, Avalon. Merlin opened his eyes at this moment. Really, it seems like there's something on the moon of any world. The moon of that world. The moon cell automaton of this world. But that's not the point. Although dealing with that thing is challenging, it lacks self-awareness. Proper guidance at the right time might lead to something interesting. The crucial part lies ahead. The wandering star of predation, comets appearing in the galaxy every 14,000 years, appearing on this planet. The last time, 14,000 years ago, the wandering star of predation, the giant Sephir, defeated the gods but was defeated by a holy sword wielder. However, that was just one of the countless possibilities. In other worlds, the wandering star of predation might not exist at all, not for any other reason, but simply because its orbit deviated slightly, and it didn't pass by Earth. There are still several decades left. The mysteries that have been receding since 1970 should have completely disappeared by 2000. But now, well, it might be advanced to 1999, or it could still be 2000. Perhaps that's why the words of the Jewel Magician were effective. Otherwise, even if the Jewel Magician said that, the magus wouldn't willingly accept it. But now, the ley lines is vanishing entirely, and the top echelons of the Mages Association have probably already sensed it. Compared to the spread of mysteries, the most critical issue is the disappearance of magical power from the ley lines. Although he couldn't see the future, he could see everything in the present. Combining this speculation with a little deduction, he could guess the outcome with a high degree of certainty. This Holy Grail War. The Mages Association might not truly perish, but this might be their last chance. After witnessing the conclusion of this upcoming Holy Grail War, those people will surely want to obtain the Holy Grail to prolong the magical power of the ley lines. And that person who originally didn't belong to this world, with a power that can rival the second magic, or perhaps even surpass it, have arrived in this world. A power system that originally didn't belong to this world might bring about a different future for this world. As for that thing on the moon, although it's dangerous, it's also protecting this world. If it were to malfunction, the coordinates that have been shielded in this solar system would be exposed, and that would be the time when the wandering star of predation arrives. However, even so, the wandering star of predation will arrive someday. And before that, the wandering star of predation. The first one was Saphir, the white giant who destroyed most of the surface civilization 14,000 years ago. Its true form is still sleeping on the moon, and its name is Velbur-02, Sephir. Then there's the second one, which hasn't arrived yet, but it's coming soon. It won't be long, just a few decades, before it reaches this planet, this civilization. The accumulated Goetia of 3,000 years, the wandering star of predation that appears every 14,000 years. This planet is truly plagued by disasters. A slight mistake, and it will be the end of the world. Merlin sighed, but he didn't pay too much attention to it. The reason was simple: disasters like these occurred on this planet almost every 1,000 or 100 years, and he had witnessed them countless times in Avalon. Each time, it disappeared before the disaster even occurred. Of course, there were exceptions. The disaster 14,000 years ago was one such exception. So when would the next exception occur? When would the true crisis that would reveal the destruction of the world finally manifest itself? Kurikawa-san, I've been waiting for a long time, Akitaka Suzurigi said, leading the way in front of Kazuya. Finally, he arrived here once again, at the Ryugi family. Kazuya's heart was beating faster and faster, even though it wasn't his first time here. However, the feeling was completely different from before. He couldn't even remember what it felt like the first time he came. Now, it was the beginning of everything, right? Kazumi dry heaved twice, but nothing came out. After a while, she looked at the stern-looking old man beside her and asked, "Where is this?" In a certain time, in the year 2010, on Earth, the magician of the second magic Zelrech replied, looking at Kazumi. 2010? Kazumi was stunned. She had suddenly traveled more than 20 years into the future? Zelrech didn't say anything more. Someone who had truly experienced traveling between parallel worlds like this was more suitable to be his successor. However, the probability had only gone from 0% to 0.01%. After all, she was just a child, and her body was too weak. Even though he had done his best to protect her, dry heaving like this was still within his expectations. But if she didn't have his protection, even with the authority in this regard, even as a heroic spirit, she might die when traveling between parallel worlds like this. This was entirely different from the moon cell automaton on the moon in the previous parallel world. However, in this world, there was no moon cell automaton, and even the wandering star of predation didn't exist. It was different from where Kazumi was before. Although this world also had a Holy Grail War, it had only been held once, and there was a clear winner who had achieved their wish. And it was achieved together with the master and their servant. All of this was within Zelrich's sight. Which world was dangerous and which was safe, he himself didn't know. In every world, there were various crises that could destroy the world. However, very few of these crises actually developed. Well, he was referring to the main parallel worlds as the core. Of course, being the main core of a world didn't mean it would always be the core. A world could give rise to countless parallel worlds. In them, there could be countless crises that could destroy the world. Among them, there were many that had been completely avoided, And among all the disasters, the surviving worlds were considered the core. In every core timeline and even in the characters of the world, there could be significant differences. For example, some worlds still had gods, while others were already on the path to destruction. Only Counterforce capable of focusing on these countless parallel worlds and deciding which ones to abandon and which ones to preserve were two. However, those worlds that had been more than half destroyed were very convenient to travel between. Going back and forth between these parallel worlds was quite simple, and there were often cases of ordinary people suddenly falling into one of these worlds. However, such people generally died after passing through, right? Only a few of them would survive. After all, those were worlds on the verge of destruction, and even the Counterforce had given up on them, so it was generally impossible to save the world just by relying on oneself. As for the reason why the Counterforce had given up, it was quite simple. It wasn't because they couldn't be saved, but because the number of parallel worlds was limited, they couldn't continue splitting indefinitely. However, new possibilities were constantly emerging, so some had to be destroyed. Perhaps many of these destroyed worlds may have been brought to destruction by certain beings summoned by the Counterforce itself. Of course, this was just a guess. There were no definite means to verify the specific situation. Alright, next, familiarize yourself with this era, and tomorrow I'll introduce you to your new teacher, Zelraj said to Kazumi. Although it was possible for her to be his disciple, he didn't believe in himself when he consulted with Merlin from that world. So, he entrusted her to Elmeloid II, a lord who was renowned in the clock tower of this world. What's wrong? You seem a bit off. Shiki looked at Kazuya somewhat uneasily. Are you sick or something? No, not at all. It's just, well, I guess I'm feeling strangely connected. You know, fate can be like that sometimes, unpredictable, Kazuya said, averting his gaze and looking at the dark sky with its twinkling stars. It would be nice to have some music at a time like this. I don't get it. I'm not like Shiki, who enjoys saying cryptic things. Explain it more clearly, Shiki sighed, seeming quite dissatisfied. She wasn't incapable of understanding, but she found it all rather cryptic and couldn't figure out what this person was saying. But if you want to listen to music, I think we have a phonograph at home. Oh, a phonograph. Isn't that really old? Kazuya changed the subject, pretending to be surprised. Is it very old? I think it sounds good, Shiki asked. Anyway, you're hosting some kind of amusement park, right? Yes, a Jojo-themed amusement park. It was temporarily opened once before, but it's not finished yet. I'll take you there when it's completed. Sounds good. It's nice to go out and have some fun. Shiki nodded, stood up, and looked at Kazuya. So, what are your plans next? I haven't decided yet, Kazuya shook his head. I don't know what to do next. There's going to be a competition in Fuyuki City soon. I want to go, but it feels dangerous. Still, I really want to go. Well, I'm stuck in a dilemma. Competition, huh? Shiki fell silent for a moment. Kazuya had already told her some things about himself before, but not everything. After a brief silence, as if pondering something, Shiki smiled and said, Hey, count me in. It sounds interesting. Maybe there'll be someone worth cutting for me. No, forget it. If something like that really happens, your father will kill me, Kazuya quickly denied it. It was too dangerous to let her go there, even though there was no risk to her life. But, well, if it was just losing an arm or something. Oh well, forget it. Even if it was just an arm, he'd still feel terrible about it. What a bore. Okay, don't worry about these things. Let me teach you something good instead. It's called the ripple breathing technique. How about it? Do you want to give it a try? The ripple breathing technique. Shiki was puzzled for a moment. Are you talking about the one from your manga? Hey, is that thing real? I don't know, but I can definitely do the ripple. How about it? Do you want to learn? Are you talking about your current way of breathing? Yes, that's right. Kazuya extended his pinky finger. Do you want me to teach you? Inhale. Exhale. What, is it that simple? Just a slight adjustment in your breathing, and you'll learn it as effortlessly as I did, said Shiki, extending a hand. Should it be like this? That ripple dash thing? Kazuya were dumbfounded. Really? She just learned it like that? It felt like a joke, but all it took was a brief glance, and she learned it just like that. Are you some kind of ultimate life form? Kazuya couldn't help but quip. No, I'm not, Shiki replied seriously, nodding her head. So, it seems the portrayal of ultimate life form in your manga isn't that exaggerated after all. After all, learning something as simple as this effortlessly is quite normal, isn't it? The Holy Grail War. A battle held every 60 years in Fuyuki City. Kazuya really wanted to go and see it. It would be even better if he could participate himself. In fact, he had participated in the Holy Grail War in his dream world and had seen such a Holy Grail War. However, it was a great pity that the participants were restricted in his dream world. That's why he became increasingly capable of discerning the falseness of the dream. For example, in the dream world, the characters that appeared, no matter how he disrupted the plot, no matter how he looked, the heroic spirits summoned were always the same few from the manga. The people who became masters were always the same few from the manga. There were no cases of someone else becoming a master or summoning different heroic spirits. To be honest, he was already tired of such a Holy Grail war. But this one would be different. Masters and servants might change. It was very different from what was supposed to happen. So he wanted to go and see. He had an irresistible urge to go. Good evening. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded, causing Kazuya to turn his head. Shiki? That's right, Shiki had entered at some point, but there was something different about her. An unfamiliar feeling he had never experienced before. Yes, it's me. Shiki Ryugi. But, in your impression, I'm usually referred to as Void Shiki, right? Well, I don't really like that nickname, Shiki said with a smile as she walked in and approached Kazuya. I understand. I'll call you Shiki, then. Kazuya smiled slightly. Good, that's better. You should have a good understanding of my existence by now, so I don't need to explain. It's nice to have someone who understands oneself, Shiki said with a smile. Meeting you like this isn't the first time for me, but a conversation like this is. It feels novel. Yes, I should give a proper greeting. Nice to meet you, Kurikawa Kazuya from another world. Kazuya raised an eyebrow. It seems like everyone knows that I'm from another world. Not everyone, but most of those who can observe and record this world will probably sense it. Although the world is vast, it's also a precise instrument. When someone from another world suddenly intrudes, it's normal to be sensed, isn't it? Shiki smiled faintly. But don't worry, this isn't the first time for you, and you can relax. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. A few years ago, at that time, it was still snowing. However, on such a day, a person arrived at the Ryugi family's residence and knocked on the door. Excuse me, is this Ryugi residence? The man asked. Yes, what can I help you with? Ryugi family servant looked up at the man, who was a head taller than himself, and furrowed his brow imperceptibly. I would like to see Shiki Ryugi, the man said directly, following his instincts. Please wait. The servant closed the door and went to inform the head of the Ryugi family. This person seemed unusual. Though they couldn't pinpoint why, there was something off about him. Later, after the head of the Ryugi family had made a judgment, a decision was reached. Bring him in for questioning. If he has no one backing him, eliminate him. Wait, father. Shiki, what is it? Ah, he wants to see me, right? How about letting me meet with him? The head of the Ryugi family furrowed his brow but ultimately agreed. Very well, then bring him in. And so, even while bound, Kurikawa Kazuya remained calm as he met Shiki Ryugi. Has something like this happened before? I can't remember. Kazuya expressed some surprise. Truthfully, he couldn't recall what he had experienced after he first arrived at Ryugi families. Yes, Shiki nodded. At that time, your soul, having just devoured another soul, was in a semi-chaotic state. Coupled with your body's rejection of your soul, if not for the system within you neutralizing the effects, your soul might have been expelled the moment it entered that body. So you mean? Ah, yes, at that time, you couldn't lie and had straightforward speech, Shiki smiled. So, if you wanted to know something, you would have revealed everything without holding back. That was dangerously close. Kazuya's mouth twitched. Was he still in such a perilous state? So, afterwards, I felt normal again, you mean? I made some adjustments to restore your semi-chaotic soul to a state of calmness and then reconstructed a body for you. It's roughly like that. I see. Kazuya nodded. So, back then, he already owed her a lot. Thank you, Shiki. No need for thanks. If you want to thank someone, thank your feelings. I decided to help you because of that. Originally, I wasn't planning to appear so soon. But, well, since you've already become aware of my existence, the timing doesn't matter. I feel like now is the best time. Shiki spoke quietly. What do you think of Shiki and Shiki? Well, they're both cute. Is that so? Shiki smiled. Then, you must know, right? Both of them want to kill you because of the chaotic impulses emanating from me. Shiki is always worried that she can't control herself. Yes, I understand now. Do you like Shiki? Or Shiki? Shiki continued to ask. Can't I like both? Of course you can. Shiki nodded and smiled. But you are quite greedy, aren't you? Wanting both of them. You should know, one of them will disappear. Quote. Whom do you want to stay? Whom do you want to disappear? Kazuya hesitated for a moment. This question, he had no idea how to answer it. No, neither of them will disappear, he finally spoke after several minutes of silence. Neither of them will. I see. You are quite greedy, Shiki remarked. After saying that, Kazuya blinked, and the person before him had disappeared. Looking at the somewhat empty room, Kazuya smiled. Yes, I'm truly greedy, aren't I? But... Fuyuki City. Waver made some slight disguises and then left his residence. In other words, he changed his clothes, with few other adjustments. Well, for someone like him who spent most of his money on magecraft, he didn't have much money to spend on clothing. In that regard, he had some complaints about the person who drew Fate Zero. After all, the biggest doubt he had when watching Fate Zero was where he got the money for the plane ticket. Upon careful consideration, he had probably borrowed it himself. Now, in Fuyuki City, there were various industries related to Fate Zero everywhere. For instance, places like Ryudo Temple had a constant stream of daily tourists. Ryudo Temple, which was not particularly famous, had suddenly become a local attraction. Some people even wanted to explore and see if there really was a big hole within Ryudo Temple. Fortunately, the temple had long-established barriers, so no one could intrude directly. Waver touched the command seals on his hand and let out a sigh of relief. He already had command seals, and his holy relic had been prepared by his mentor, Kaneth. If everything went as planned, he should be able to summon the heroic spirit named Alexander. Well, he was ready. The games the man enjoyed, as well as clothes that fit his size. He was just waiting to summon the man who had conquered him with his charisma in the manga alone. However, what made him uncomfortable was that, even though he had achieved a high rank in the manga, in reality, he only had the cause position, which was elevated through his contributions, and his actual rank was just cause. It was frustrating. The Holy Grail War is about to begin. Waver looked at the various shops around the streets and felt somewhat sentimental. According to the message from the clock tower's high-ranking official, Wizard Marshall, this was an event that had indeed occurred in a parallel world. Wizard Marshall wanted to see the effects of transplanting events from other worlds into this world. So, he had subtly arranged for someone who was exceptionally fast at drawing manga to create Fate Zero. It was through this that Waver learned one thing: leylines were depleting in this world. It was predicted that by the year 2000, with the arrival of the new century, leylines would be completely exhausted. At that point, even magical energy would cease to exist, and the spread of mystery would become irrelevant. However, there was another way. This time, Waver and Kaneth's mission was to participate in and observe the Holy Grail War, as well as to investigate whether the Holy Grail possessed the power to prolong leylines. If it truly existed. If Kaneth had to pick the most painful thing he'd experienced after reading Fate Zero, it wouldn't be getting betrayed. What truly broke his heart was the destruction of everything he'd set up in the Hyatt Hotel. Just by looking at the instructions, Kenneth knew how much effort he'd put into it. Especially the magical energy reactors, which was the core that supplied energy for evil spirits and apparitions, as well as the very heart of the barrier he'd constructed. It supported the entire barrier's magical operations. It was also the most valuable item mentioned in the instructions, worth several times more than the entire Hyatt Hotel combined. And then all three, they were blown up together. Plus, the materials he'd spent on setting up the barrier. All that money, gone in an instant. It was heart-wrenching. This time, it wouldn't happen like that again. Perhaps it wasn't as comfortable as the hotel, but he didn't want to live in a place that could be bombed so easily anymore. He found an abandoned factory and, having learned his lesson, installed a lot of magic and modern equipment in the underground sewers. Like surveillance cameras, he also arranged for people brought in from the Mages Association to monitor around the clock. With this setup, there was no way that person named Emiya Kiritsugu could bomb him again. Even modern weapons like RPGs would be blocked by this powerful, otherworldly barrier. Magical energy reactors, 5 of them. Hundreds of evil spirits and apparitions had completely sealed off this place, creating a ghost town-like area. He set up a repellent barrier nearby, with half of the evil spirits and apparitions on the outside and the other half inside the repellent barrier. Anyone who dared to approach would definitely encounter these apparitions. Without his authorization, those evil spirits and apparitions would attack anyone indiscriminately. If there was anything reassuring about the manga, it was his own death. Sora had seen the manga too. But without facing that heroic spirit, she, like Kenneth, believed that she was merely bewitched by the heroic spirit's curse, confused by his terror mole. And for the way she had treated him back then, even if he had given up on the Holy Grail War, it had moved her. It could be said that their emotions had become even stronger, which relieved him. The Sophia Ree family also had a high opinion of him. Outsiders didn't understand, but as magus, they knew just how valuable the things destroyed by Emiya Kiritsugu were. And even so, he still maintained a certain level of dignity and challenged the Ainsburns head-on. In his view, what had originally not happened to him had instead provided him with a lot of convenience and prestige. For those who didn't understand, all he could say was, the way magus think is different from regular people. So be it. Professor Kenneth, I'm back. Waver walked in, organizing his thoughts. How is it? Did you find any suitable places for combat? Yes, although there are many people on this side of Fuyuki City, there are still places suitable for combat. That's good. Although Leyline may disappear, there are still ways to continue it. In any case, magic hasn't truly been exposed yet. Starting in 1970, the world took a different path. In 1970, a certain ritual took place in England, and from that point on, the world went in a different direction. If it was completely stopped, Leyline would continue to deteriorate, just as it did in the Age of Gods, slowly diminishing, perhaps disappearing completely after hundreds or thousands of years. If it wasn't stopped, the world would move in another direction. By 1970, Leyline would have completely depleted, and it was predicted that by 2000, the Earth's population would be reduced by 2/3. Stopping a part of it, that's where we are now. The mana within Leyline would still deplete, but this time was significantly shortened, and it finally didn't disappear immediately, giving magus the opportunity to develop, transform, and continue. And at this time, the Holy Grail caught the attention of the Mages Association's higher-ups. The Mages Association would find a way to gather mana. In other words, even if this Holy Grail war failed, it didn't matter. Even if all the evil in this world was gathered in this Holy Grail war. All Kenneth needed to do was determine if the Holy Grail had this possibility. If it did, then for the continuation of Leyline, in some place with rich Leyline, sparsely populated, the Mages Association would once again hold a Holy Grail war, and then use the Holy Grail formed at the end to extend Leyline's existence, delaying the decline of mana. What is that? Waver suddenly stared at what was in front of Kenneth. HMPH, these new relics. They aren't Alexander's or Dearmood's, but entirely new relics, from the 5th century AD, a lock of hair belonging to the man known as the Scourge of God. Huh? Has that hair been preserved until now? Waver said with surprise. That's right, and Kenneth opened the box. It looks like it was just cut recently, doesn't it? Waver took a look, and indeed, when Kenneth mentioned white hair, Waver initially thought it was the hair of that man in his old age. But now it seemed otherwise. Looking at it, he realized it wasn't the white hair of an elderly person, nor did it look like it had been preserved for over 1,000 years. It was incomprehensible, with a smooth, youthful feeling to it, emitting an unusual magical power. Who is that person, after all? Even with just a lock of hair, it feels like this, and it might be eternal, his body. I don't know. These were preserved after he cut them. Kenneth closed the box. I also don't know where his body ended up. But, judging by the look of this hair, I can guess. It probably still retains its appearance from when he was alive. Should I say it's fitting for the scourge of God, the man called Attila? Waver took a deep breath. In that case, once successful, they would have two kings here. Alexander Iskander, the king of Conqueror, and Kaahneth's attempt to summon the king of the Huns, Attila, who had established a vast kingdom. Moreover, these two kings had one thing in common. Both of their kingdoms were founded during their lifetimes and perished after their deaths. This is. Kotomine Kirei looked at the holy relic prepared by Tasaka Tokiomi in astonishment. In the distant age of gods, it's an earring left behind by Karna, the son of the sun god Surya and a disciple of Parashurama, who wields an axe, Tasaka Tokiomi said with a smile. Although he's not a strong candidate for caster, it's a bit of a shame. I've tried my best to collect them, but I still haven't obtained an ideal holy relic. Master, what kind of holy relic were you originally planning to get? This one. Tasaka Tokiomi thought for a moment. Merlin, King Arthur's teacher, would have been a good choice. There's also Solomon, renowned as the pinnacle of magus. Scathach, the queen of shadows in Celtic mythology, and Chiron, the wise one in Greek mythology, not to mention Abe no Seimei from Japanese legends. I was originally planning to summon heroes like them. But unfortunately, I didn't get any of them. Instead, I ended up with this earring from Karna, the son of the sun god. I see. If you really summon that hero. It's likely to be Lancer or Rider. Tasaka Tokiomi nodded and looked at Kotomine Kirei. How's your holy relic preparation going? No problem, it's ready. Although it might not be a powerful character, it should be sufficient for an assassin. That's good. Tasaka Tokiomi nodded. The situation is going to get tense now. From this point on, don't come unless there's something special. The masters who came early should have already set up their familiars in the vicinity. I understand. Tasaka Tokiomi nodded. He had indeed intended to summon Karna, but he had also collected the holy relic of that king of heroes. Even if he didn't use it himself, he couldn't let anyone else use it. After all, this heroic spirit was truly extraordinary. However, it was precisely because of this that it was difficult to control. Now, he was only worried that someone else might summon this ancient king with a different holy relic. No matter how difficult he was to control, his strength was unquestionable. Even if he not fully revealed his noble phantasm, he was still an extremely powerful heroic spirit. Fill, 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 repeat every 5 times. In a typical residential area of Fuyuki City, a voice like this echoed. If anyone happened to pass by and heard it, they would probably just smile and think, another person whose brain has been messed up by reading too much manga. Of course, that's what they would say, but the room had excellent soundproofing. Even if someone pressed their ear to the wall, they wouldn't be able to hear what was happening inside the room. Simply, shatter once filled. I announce, the voice continued. But there was no magical fluctuation, and the carefully inscribed magecraft array in front of the person in the room made no sound. However, there were traces of a spell composed of what looked like 3.5 red semicircles on the person's outstretched hand. Yourself is under me, my fate is in your sword. In accordance with the approach of the Holy Grail, if you abide by this feeling, this reason, then answer. Here is my oath. I am the one who becomes all the good of the world of the dead. I am the one who lays out all the evil of the world of the dead. You, 7 heavens clad in 3 words of power. Arrive from the Ring of Deterrence, O Keeper of the Balance. With the final summoning incantation, there was finally a sound in the room. The Magecraft array briefly emitted a burst of light, then projected onto the person in the room. What is this? The man, Kazuya, stared at the current situation with a somewhat surprised look on his face. He hadn't prepared a holy relic himself. He didn't have the means to obtain one in that regard. Although he had relied on ancient families like the Ryugi family did have some things in that regard, but he felt that none of them were suitable for him. So, he wanted to see what kind of heroic spirit he could summon based on compatibility. If it was weak, he would immediately run away without a second thought. He would stay far away from Fuyuki City and simply watch the battle between the heroic spirit and the master through the shared vision they had. He wouldn't interfere with whatever the heroic spirit wanted to do. However, if he could summon a powerful heroic spirit based on compatibility, he would have the ability to observe the Holy Grail War up close and even participate in it. And now, an unexpected development occurred. The heroic spirit he had summoned turned out to be himself. Moreover, it wasn't like the Red Archer who appeared as a separate entity but directly manifested on his own body. In other words, he was both a servant and a master right now. What an unexpected turn of events. Let's see what kind of power I have now. There's still some time before the Holy Grail War officially begins, so I might be able to adapt to the strength of this body for now. True name, Kurokawa Kazuya. Class, Caster. Strength, C. Endurance, B. Agility, C. Magic, E. Luck. A Noble Phantasm, E. A++. Class Skills. Territory Creation, B+. Kurokawa Kazuya's ability known as Alchemy, originally capable of reaching X rank, but greatly weakened due to the current state of the world not supporting his use of alchemy. Personal Skills. Mangaka, A+. In Legends, mangaka Kurokawa Kazuya had an extremely fast drawing speed for manga, allowing him to quickly draw anything he saw. Golden Rule. A. Mangaka Kurokawa Kazuya possessed enormous, incalculable wealth. Although he always approached making anime with a mindset of losing money, he always ended up making inexplicable profits, causing his wealth to increase steadily. Ultimate Life Form. C. Due to being a caster, this special ability hasn't fully manifested, but he still possesses a strong regenerative ability and the ability to control his body to a certain extent. Ripple Energy. B- because of his status as a caster, this ability has been significantly weakened. However, due to his current body's innate ripple energy, it has been enhanced to a B rank. Innocent Monster. Due to the worldwide fame of his manga, Kurokawa Kazuya possessed the fangs of a vampire and the forearms of a monster. However, in reality, he could actually give himself these abilities, so this skill didn't take effect. Noble Phantasm. Death 13, B+. One of Kurokawa Kazuya's abilities is known as Stand, and can silently kill people in their sleep. However, because a person can only have one stand at most, aside from the main body, this limitation applies even when he's a servant. Each summoning may randomly have one stand. In other words, Kurokawa Kazuya has several stands. When facing the Holy Grail War, a random number of stands may be available. Phantasmagoria of a Perfect Night. E. A++ by consuming a large amount of magical energy, Kurokawa Kazuya can temporarily become one of the characters from his own manga. In theory, anyone can be chosen. However, when transforming into this character, not only does he gain their abilities, but his personality is also affected. If the altered personality is too strong, there's even a possibility of being consumed, which is why Kurokawa Kazuya isn't particularly fond of this skill. Furthermore, Kurokawa Kazuya's magical energy is almost non-existent, and he has always used his life force, or ripple, as his source of power. Ripple energy cannot support the use of this noble phantasm. Typically, it would require the use of command spells to complete a transformation. Some powerful characters may even require the consumption of more than 5 command spells to achieve a short-term transformation. In a regular Holy Grail War, a master typically has only 3 command spells. Ultimate Battle to Save the World. A skill that can only be used in a battle to save the world. After using it, regardless of the current class, he will transform into the Saver class and unleash immense combat power. Kazuya looked at his panel, slightly surprised. Leaving aside other matters, did it just reveal some spoilers? For example, the part about the territory creation, he had a feeling that this was a skill from something called Full Metal Alchemist. And then it mentioned, the current planet does not support him using this alchemy, so does that mean it will be supported in the future? And the ultimate life form. Did this mean he was definitely going to get a red stone of Asia? Could he breathe a sigh of relief? Next was the golden rule. Well, it directly told him the result. No matter what you do, you'll make a fortune due to various unexpected events. Maybe he should be even more extravagant with his animation projects, burning billions, even hundreds of billions, or even trillions of yen. Each time, he'd put his entire fortune on the line and see if he could still profit. His noble phantasm, Death 13. This was a stand from Jojo's Bizarre Adventure, Part 3. So, when Part 3 concluded, this stand would be what he could get. In reality, aside from the lack of direct combat abilities, it felt quite strong. It could pull people into a dream and kill them. However, if the person woke up during the process, they'd disappear from the dream. When they woke up, they wouldn't remember anything from the dream, just that they had a nightmare and forgotten everything. It was an effective assassination tool. And it wasn't just for offense, it could also be used for healing. For example, against this stand user, a character named Noriaki Kakyoin, from the manga, by injuring his own arm in the dream and leaving a message that said, "The baby is the stand user," he made his future self realize that something was amiss upon waking up. After defeating the stand user, he used the stand in the dream to heal his injured arm. As a result, when he woke up, his arm was completely healed. It could be said that it had great potential if used effectively. Finally, there was his noble phantasm, phantasmagoria of a perfect night. The objects of transformation weren't determined by the people he could currently transform into, but the future. It was based on the manga he would create before becoming a heroic spirit. It was determined by that. He noticed that there were quite a few perverse, superpowered versions of characters inside. In other words, they were further enhanced versions beyond the original. For example, an ultra-enhanced version of Aizen who has absorbed Yhwach's Almighty, as well as the Soul King from the Soul King's palace. However, he felt that to transform into such a character, he'd need at least 10 command spells. Moreover, if the personality of the person being changed is too strong, there's even a possibility of being consumed. If he truly became such a character, there might actually be a possibility of being consumed. It was an ability that required careful consideration. Although it seemed powerful, his limited command spells allowed for few opportunities to use it. Though he could obtain command spells by eliminating Kotomine Rise, but Kotomine Rise is not a magus. However, both the Holy Church and the Mages Association are mysterious, and it's uncertain if they can be dealt with. But it's still better to avoid it if possible. Consider a way to obtain command spells without having to kill him. There must be a way. And finally, the effect of his noble phantasm, ultimate battle to save the world. Ha ha ha, King of Conquerors Iskander. I've been summoned. So, who is my master? King of Conquerors Iskander looked around, squinting slightly, just after being summoned. The connection with his master hadn't been completed yet. It would take a little more time. So, looking at the two individuals with command spells in front of him, he couldn't immediately determine which one was his master. I am, Waver Velvet said excitedly, success. Not only did he get summoned, but he also saw his most admired heroic spirit in the flesh. Ho ho. Well done, young man. You seem to possess the air of a conqueror, Iskander chuckled. So, is this an alliance? He looked at Kainith next to Waver. Indeed, Kainith smiled. I am his teacher, Kainith El Meloy Archibald. Oh, a master and apprentice participating together in the Holy Grail War. Interesting. And what about the heroic spirit you summoned? Who is it? We haven't started yet, Kainith said, looking at Iskander. Because the heroic spirit we're going to summon is quite unfamiliar, we'd like to summon a familiar heroic spirit just in case. A familiar heroic spirit? Are you saying it's me? Iskander was slightly surprised. Could it be that I've been summoned somewhere else? As far as he knew, this was supposed to be his only summoning. No, it's not like that. You could say that someone saw the future. Waver, bring over what we prepared. I understand. Waver nodded and brought several books over, placing them in Iskander's hands. He explained, it's these books. They depict the 4th and 5th Holy Grail wars happening in parallel worlds in the near future. I see, you used this to determine, huh? Iskander said, flipping through the pages. This thing, is it called a manga? He used the knowledge transmitted through the Holy Grail to ask. Well then, young man, is there no suitable place to read here? Iskander looked around. It's too cramped in here. Don't worry, everything is prepared, including modern clothing for you, Waver reassured him. Iskander wrinkled his brows and took a deep breath. Kid, you seem to understand me quite well? That's why I want you to take a look at it. Waver pointed to the book in Iskander's hand. Your personality is quite clearly reflected in that book. Oh, so there's such a thing? Iskander expressed some surprise. While he wouldn't be surprised by history books or the like, he didn't expect that this book would also distort his personality quite a bit. However, strangely, he felt familiar with his current state, like the feeling of everyone he had ever conquered. It was unexpectedly pleasant. Haha, alright, I'll take a closer look. Let's see what will appear in it, Kazuya, familiarizing himself with his abilities. Because now, whether it was his stand ability or the system's abilities, they all required a dream. He discovered that only by closing all dream options on the system could he use Death 13's ability. And, this ability could be said to be the most useful one in his normal state so far. As for his second noble phantasm, Phantasmagoria of a Perfect Night, it could only be activated using command spells. And it could only be used up to 3 times. And the final noble phantasm, he didn't believe that this battle would reach the level of world destruction this time, which meant he wouldn't be able to use it. This was an ability he couldn't use at all. But, apart from this ability, there were other abilities he could familiarize himself with. Aside from his second noble phantasm, Phantasmagoria of a Perfect Night, which would be most effective in battle. Alchemy at B+ level, Ultimate Life Form at C level, Stronger Ripple, and Stand, Death 13. This noble phantasm didn't consume anything. All it needed was to pull someone into a dream, and when that person woke up, they would forget everything about the dream. It wasn't just people, animals could also be pulled in, like dogs. He could give it a try to see what the results would be when this ability was used in reality. Of course, killing was out of the question. Just observe the effects of pulling someone in, maybe causing a minor injury at most, and see if it could heal completely by the next day. He was curious about the effects on magus and heroic spirits, though. For heroic spirits, he could see which was the weakest heroic spirit in this Holy Grail war and experiment with them, magus, too. Lastly, don't reveal your true identity. Kazuya looked at the face in the mirror, and his muscles, bones, and even cells began to change. For ultimate life form, even creating life was something that could be done. However, with his current C level as ultimate life form, he couldn't do that. According to his judgment, he was slightly stronger than the Pillar Men and wasn't afraid of the sun, but it was only to this extent for now. Soon, Kazuya's body changed. First, he became slightly shorter, around 1.8 meters tall. His bones became larger, eye sockets deeper, nose slightly lower, mouth a bit bigger than usual. His skin appeared slightly rougher, but it had turned Caucasian in color, and even his irises changed to blue from the previous gray-black. Lastly, his hair, which had been rapidly growing, turned into a golden color. The person in the mirror no longer resembled his original appearance. This is good. With this, no one can recognize my true identity, Kazuya said with satisfaction. He didn't have any wishes to be fulfilled by the Holy Grail. If he accidentally obtained the Holy Grail in the end, he would probably wish for a large amount of money or perhaps advanced animation production equipment from beyond this era. The latter possibility was better because he wasn't short of money. With an A- ranked golden rule, how could he be short of money? His purpose in participating in this Holy Grail war was simple: to observe these people, their current development, and see if they could provide him with new inspiration, nothing more. Unlike his dreams, this time, Castor was summoned by him. Who were the remaining 6 heroic spirits? This time, there would definitely be changes, right? It's about time. The basement of the Tasaka family. Tasaka Tokiomi placed the relic aside and prepared to start chanting the incantation. This time, both Kotomine Kirei and Kotomine Risei were absent. They hadn't come in a long time, and Tasaka Tokiomi's judgment was correct. Indeed, there were masters from both the Mages Association and the church who had set up familiars here. Correspondingly, he also played along with a little act. Furthermore, as per the plan, once he summoned the heroic spirit, the first thing he would do was kill Kotomine Kirei. After all, he had done such a thing in that manga. According to the information obtained from the clock tower, it was likely that this future could actually happen. It was just in another parallel world. However, what he was doubtful about was why Wizard Marshall would specifically mention it. Kurikawa Kazuya was just a pawn. Even if a magus from the past killed him, it shouldn't matter. Or is it? Not just this time. Was Wizard Marshall planning to use Kurikawa Kazuya for something else? If that were the case, killing him wouldn't be of any use, even if he did. After all, there were many famous mangakas. If one died, they could just find another one. What interested Wizard Marshall was probably just his drawing speed. Compared to other mangaka, a slightly slower pace wouldn't make much of a difference. Indeed, in the eyes of most magus, Kurikawa Kazuya had become another person whom Wizard Marshall had deceived. As for why it was said that it happened again, because so far, the only one who had walked away unscathed in Wizard Marshall's hands was the ancestor of the Tasaka family. He had many disciples, but most of them were crushed by Wizard Marshall himself. So, it wasn't necessarily the stronger you were, the better a teacher you'd be. Someone like El Meloy too, whose own strength wasn't much to speak of, but possessed an astonishing amount of theoretical knowledge and an eye for identifying talents, was the best kind of teacher. Fill, repeat every 5 times. With the incantation for the summoning of heroic spirits resounding, the summoning circle in front emitted a burst of light. With a dazzling but harmless flame, the heroic spirit was successfully summoned. Servant, Lancer. My true name is Karna. Nice to meet you. Success. Tasaka Tokiomi clenched his fist. With Lancer and Kirei's assassin, victory is assured. So, you're my master, right? Exactly, and you must be the great hero from Indian mythology. The son of the sun god, Karna, correct? Tasaka Tokiomi smiled. That's right, Karna replied expressionlessly. But if you can, please refrain from calling me, son of the sun god, master. Tasaka Tokiomi was slightly taken aback, then, as if thinking of something elegant, he bowed slightly. Understood. So, may I address you as, Lancer? How does that sound? That's fine. Phil, Kaneth, Waver, and Iskander. The 3 of them stood in front of the summoning circle. Iskander looked at Kaneth, who was in the process of summoning a heroic spirit. Iskander looked at the summoning circle thoughtfully. If the summoning succeeded this time, they would summon Attila, the king of the Huns. Another renowned king. Unfortunately, they ended up in the same faction. That meant they couldn't have a battle. He had read the entire Fate series, and honestly, he really wanted to have a good fight with the heroic spirits from that world. Especially that golden one. He had actually lost to him. Even after using his noble phantasm, Ionioi Heteroi, he still lost. It really made his blood boil. Buzz. Oh. Here it comes, Ryder exclaimed. Then he saw a white figure. Huh? What? In the next moment, Ryder was taken aback and said to Waver, Hey kid, are all Saber class supposed to be female? That's right, what was in front of them was not the conqueror they had imagined but a girl with tanned skin, white short hair, and long white veils trailing behind her. I don't know, how would I know? Waver shook his head. But, maybe, it's true. After all, the previous Arthur in the manga was a female. And now, this Attila was also a female. Of course, there was another possibility, that the summoning had gone wrong, and the one in front of them wasn't Attila. Ka'aneth's face darkened for a moment, but he still asked, "Servant, state your class and name." I am Altera, the king of the Huns, the embodiment of destruction. The female servant who called herself Altera said. "My class is Saber. What do you need me to destroy?" Altera, not Attila. Ka'aneth asked directly. "Both are fine." The girl who called herself Altera replied. "But I prefer Altera as the name." "Alright, then we'll call you Altera," Ka'aneth said. "Just this simple thing would have to do for now. So, Altera, what is your wish in response to the Holy Grail summoning?" Although writer Iskander's abilities and noble phantasms had already been exposed, he was a powerful heroic spirit who didn't care even if they were exposed. Moreover, this guy had even said recently, "That dark mud. I also want to have a soak in it. If that heroic spirit can endure it, there's no reason I can't. I'll use my conqueror's might to conquer all the evil in this world. Ha ha ha." So, his wish was also clear, to obtain a physical body. But now, in front of them, they didn't know what Altera's wish was. Destruction. Altera said directly. "Destruction of civilization, destruction of everything, that is my destiny." "I'm not asking about your destiny. I'm asking about your wish," Ka'aneth repeated. "Wish." Altera fell silent for a moment and then said, "I have no wish." "Ah, well, I understand," Ka'aneth said, holding his forehead. "Just take it as it is." These heroic spirits were one prouder than the other. Saying they had no wish might be true, but this made things difficult. It would be fine if they had a clear wish, but the key was that they didn't. "No, wait." Ryder suddenly spoke up. "You have no wish. That's not right. You do have a wish." "Who are you?" Altera looked at Ryder. "Haha, I am Ryder Iskander. Your expression says it all. You definitely have your own wish, so why don't you tell us?" Ryder asked. "I already said, I have no wish," Altera said, and a colorful sword appeared in her hand. "Don't do anything unnecessary, Ryder. I will destroy you." "Haha. Well, let's give it a try then. I also want to see what kind of hero the king of the Huns is," Ryder said, and he swelled up with wind. His modern attire instantly turned into his battle robes as a heroic spirit. "Alright. Everyone calm down," Ka'aneth shouted. "Now you're all in the same faction. There's no need to do anything unnecessary like this. And Altera, right? You wanted to destroy, didn't you? Well, for today, let's take a break, and tomorrow you can fight with the other heroic spirits?" "I understand," Altera said, and her figure dissipated. Ryder sighed. "She's a strange heroic spirit." "What's the matter, Ryder?" Waver asked, somewhat confused. "Didn't you see?" Ryder looked at his master. "What's going on in that girl's heart? Seriously. Why are all these Saber-class girls so awkward?" It was a vast stone chamber, the floor of which was covered in gold. On the gold lay a massive bed, and on that massive bed lay a giant white figure that nearly filled the entire space, making the already enormous chamber feel small. The white giant had been in this room for 14,000 years. During those 14,000 years, she had not taken a single step outside of this room. For her, it was a room where she could only lie down and curl up her body. She couldn't even stand up. During those 14,000 years, she had not slept. Even in her dormant state, her consciousness remained awake. "My wish," the giant said, and then closed her eyes, looking at her own dream. "Einsburn. Kiritsugu. How's it going?" Irisviel asked with some concern, looking at Emiya Kiritsugu. "Don't worry, it's all over now," Emiya Kiritsugu breathed a sigh of relief. "I've already bought a house in the countryside in Japan. There's no need to prepare any luggage here. You can just buy everything you need there. Oh, and I haven't told Ilyasviel about this yet, have I?" "This matter?" "Yeah, not yet," Irisviel nodded. "After all, she's still young. When the time comes, we can just tell her we're going on a trip, and I'm sure she'll be delighted." "I see. Then let's start now," Emiya Kiritsugu said and began chanting the incantation for summoning a heroic spirit. Soon, With a burst of light, the summoning of the heroic spirit was successfully completed. A red figure told Emiya Kiritsugu that he had made the right bet. That appearance. Yes, this was indeed the heroic spirit. Servant, a archer. The red figure, who had just wanted to make a cool entrance, opened his eyes and looked at the black-clad man and the white-clad woman in the room, and froze. What? What was going on here? What on earth is going on here? The red heroic spirit blinked for a moment but quickly recovered. He said, "Servant Archer," reporting in response to the summon. "So, who is my master?" At the same time, he consoled himself, knowing that heroic spirits existed independently of timelines, and being summoned by anyone at any time was not something to be surprised about. That's right, this was just a normal procedure, and there was nothing to be surprised about. "I am your master." Emiya Kiritsugu raised his hand to display his command seals and said, "So, if this succeeds, you will be heroic spirit Emiya. Underscore. What? What's going on here? Why does he seem to understand less and less?" "It seems to be the case," Emiya Kiritsugu chuckled. "I don't think we need to introduce ourselves, right?" Wait a minute, I admit that I know you, or to be more precise, I know you. But, what's going on now?" Emiya felt very confused. Emiya Kiritsugu. The possibility of summoning himself was not non-existent, considering his connection to the summoning circle and the Holy Grail, Avalon. It wasn't impossible to be summoned if he didn't summon King Arthur. But, why did he have an expression like, "It succeeded," and, "It's definitely him"? According to his memories, at this point, he should have fallen from the ceiling, and then a girl named Rin Tasaka should have pushed open the broken door. It should have been like that. Now, everything here, both in terms of time and space, felt very wrong. "Instead of me explaining, it's better if you see for yourself," Emiya Kiritsugu said, and he fell into a slight silence. He didn't know what to call him. He had thought about it before, but every time he couldn't come up with the most appropriate way, so he just went with the flow. And now, it had finally come to this moment. "I understand," Emiya sighed. From the current situation, there seemed to be something wrong with this world line. The person in front of him, Emiya Kiritsugu, seemed to know a lot. And on the other side, it must be his adoptive mother, Irisville. She looked at him with a motherly expression. He couldn't handle it. Right now, he should probably run away. Then, under Emiya Kiritsugu's guidance, he saw the manga series, Fate. Emiya put down the book. "I pretty much understand the situation now. So, it's for the entertainment of the magician of the second magic." That's about right, at least that's how the clock tower explained it." Emiya Kiritsugu took out a cigarette and looked at the seal on it before putting it back. "At least, yes. It doesn't seem so to me. That guy named Kurakawa Kazuya isn't so simple. He has his own peculiarities. Of course, none of this concerns us. I'm not prepared to pursue the truth too far." "So, what is your goal?" For now, just call you master. I hope you understand." Emiya waved his hand. I know. I'm also a bit disoriented at the moment." Emiya Kiritsugu nodded and sat down. Here's some tea for you." Irisville poured 2 cups of tea and said, "Take your time talking." "Thank you, Irisville." "Thank you, that. You can call me whatever you like. But, well, I hope that before you leave, you can call me something like, Mom. Even though I've never seen you before, I can still feel that kind of close family feeling." Irisville smiled and walked toward the door. "Take your time chatting." "All right." Emiya nodded, but he didn't say anything else. He shrugged and looked at Emiya Kiritsugu. "Honestly, although I'm glad to see you, it feels really awkward right now." "It's not that bad." Emiya Kiritsugu took a sip of tea and said, "Although there are other options, I feel that you're the most suitable. You should understand what I'm thinking now, right?" I can guess to some extent." Emiya looked at the room and said, "Take Ilyasville away. And, since the Greater Grail in Fuyuki City no longer serves its purpose, you will definitely find a way to dismantle it." Phew, Emiya Kiritsugu exhaled heavily, propping his forehead with one hand. "That's right. It has to be done. We can't let that thing threaten the world anymore. It has to be completely dismantled." "Yeah, that makes sense. What about the other masters? Emiya asked. It seems that the Tasaka family is still preparing for the Holy Grail War. After all, it seems that this situation doesn't affect reaching the root. The Matu's old man is now under the sealing designation of the Mages Association. They had sent an executor before, but, to be expected from an old bug that has lived for hundreds of years, he still managed to escape. Now, he's probably lurking somewhere in Fuyuki City, preparing for the Holy Grail War. I see. What about Kotomine Kirei? Emiya asked about the person both of them were concerned about. As for Kotomine Kirei, he has already completely severed ties with his father, Kotomine Risei, and the entire Tasaka family. He ran away from the Tasaka family. And now he's hiding somewhere in Fuyuki City. I imagine he will summon a servant, too. After all, he has the command seals in his possession. If he summons a suitable heroic spirit, he might be able to achieve his own goals. In any case, we can't let him obtain the Grail in the end. He's too dangerous. I understand. Lastly, as for the clock tower, they dispatched Kaneth and Waver, the same people who were prepared to come earlier. But I heard that the Holy Grail has changed its properties, so I don't know which heroic spirit they will summon. That's true. Faced with this situation, I doubt many people would still summon the same heroic spirits as before. Emiya shrugged and said, after all, the noble phantasms and abilities of those previous heroic spirits have already been exposed, so they can devise corresponding strategies. So, what is the clock tower's objective? Confirmation. To see if they can use the Grail to prolong the collapsing ley line. Ley line? Emiya was momentarily taken aback. What happened to ley line? You don't know? Emiya Kiritsugu was also somewhat surprised. In 1970, ley line of this world started to slowly collapse, and it was predicted to completely collapse by 2000. I had no idea. Emiya's lips twitched. Until I became a heroic spirit, ley line was still intact.